What's up, guys? I just left Las Vegas, so I wanted to let you know what my experience was like there as a gay person and my take on gay dating in Las Vegas. So I will say that I was only there for like 3 days. I was visiting a friend for the most part, so we kind of had our own stuff that we wanted to do. So I actually didn't go to any gay bars or gay clubs, even though I'm sure there must be some gay clubs in Vegas because there's clubs for everything in Vegas. I didn't go to any. So all I can speak about is the apps because that's what I was checking out there. And then I'll also tell you about what happened my last night in Vegas. So when it comes to the apps, right? I thought with Vegas it would go one way or the other. I thought my first instinct was this is a one industry town, kind of like how LA is, an entertainment Hollywood city. I thought with Vegas it's going to be the same, but with nightlife and casino life and everything. So I thought that aesthetically I would probably find on the apps the same kind of guy over and over, which would be guys who work in that industry. So guys who are, dancers, let's say, or who are club promoters, or who are bartenders, or who are makeup artists for the shows in Vegas. That was my assumption. So I thought it would be boring and that it would be like the same kind of guy over and over. But then I thought, this is a city that is so heavily reliant on tourism that maybe it'll be the opposite and there won't actually be like a trend because so many of the people in like a 5-mile radius will be tourists that there will be no real pattern or trends or like a type of guy. It'll just be mostly tourists. So I will say that I was pleasantly surprised that it was a total like blend, a hodgepodge of different types of guys. And I do think that that's because so many of them had to be tourists. Of course, to really know that for sure, I'd have to analyze each profile and like look at each person's information, whether it was Tinder or Grindr or whatever. I didn't have the patience to do that, but I did get the vibe that most people were around me were in fact tourists, which makes sense because I was in a hotel myself. So with Tinder, I was pleasantly surprised by that. I was also pleasantly surprised by the number of gay men that there were. Las Vegas is one of the only smaller American cities I've been to where I never ran out of options to swipe through. Like there were just always more gay guys popping up on Tinder. So I was pleasantly surprised by the number of gay men in a close vicinity and also just the different types, the different races, the different backgrounds, the different cultures, like not all American guys. Now with Grindr, it was kind of a different story in that, yes, there were of course men around, but then anytime that I would add some kind of filter out of curiosity, so if you don't use Grindr, what I mean by that is you can add an age filter, like you only want to see people between, let's say, the age of 20 and 30, or you only want to see guys who are looking for dates or who are looking for a hookup, or guys who are twinks or guys who are bears or whatever. As soon as I would add any filter, I'd say the first 20 to maybe 50 guys were local. Local meaning in a few miles radius, I guess. And then after that, it would jump. And I don't know that I've been to that many places where in that one grid, you see people who are like 100 miles away. So, obviously I was a tourist, so it's a different perspective, but I thought it must be totally a double-edged sword if you really live in Vegas, if you're local. If you're looking for like casual connections, Vegas I'm sure is perfect because there's constantly tourists coming in and out like a revolving door. But I imagine if you're looking for something more serious, it's difficult, A, because there are so many tourists, but B, it seems like once you actually venture out from the strip and where the heart of that tourism is, the nightlife and everything, it seems like as you keep getting farther out, there's fewer and fewer and fewer gay men, which obviously makes sense because outside of the city, then it's more suburban. But I did kind of like on Grindr feel bad looking at, after the first 20 or so guys, if I had a filter on, I'm like, wow, they get really spaced out. It makes sense. Like, the average gay man would probably have no desire to randomly live in a desert, unless it's LA or Vegas. So that was my experience. And then the last night that I was there, I went out with my friend who I was visiting, and she's very well connected in Vegas. She's kind of like in the nightlife world, her partner's in the nightlife world. So we went to all these cool clubs and had like unlimited drinks flowing and everything, and it was a fun time. And it's funny, like I was just hanging out with my friend, and then more people kept kind of joining in, people she knew, and then friends of friends. And I wasn't even thinking, first off, I should mention it's been so long it's been so long, I want to say since college, that I've been in like a straight party environment. Because since I was like 21, I really started going to gay bars, and I always try to stick to that environment, because for me, I'm just like, what value can I get from like a straight bar or club? Like, I mean, one of the clubs we went to, I had to pay a cover like $20 because I'm a boy, and I haven't had to do that in so long, and there's a reason why, because men are treated differently at these places, right? You're not preferred at these places. And even as a gay person going there, it's like, what value do I get? Like, when I go out, I want to meet people, I want to flirt. I had to kind of get back into that mindset of like, I'm partying with straight people, if that makes sense. And I was happy to do it. You know, I was getting all these free drinks and whatever. And then two of the guys who ended up being kind of in our circle that night, again, it's really weird because I'm just not used to being around so many straight people, especially straight men, while partying and drinking. But I just felt like there was a vibe with these two separate guys. I felt like our eyes kind of met, and that there was something that I'm used to feeling with gay men when there's a chemistry. And with my friend, I was like, am I delusional, or do you sense something too? And she saw it too, she felt it too. And it's something that you can't always articulate, but you just feel it. You feel a chemistry, you feel a vibe. So specifically, like, one of the guys winked at me at one point during the night. Both of them were pretty touchy-feely with me in a very kind, warm way. Nothing too suggestive. But I guess for me, I'm not used to straight men interacting with me that way. So for me, it always makes me assume, especially if alcohol is flowing, that on their part there's a curiosity, or, you know, maybe this is what they do. Maybe in Vegas, I mean, even in LA, I think there's some of that. People go out and they're less inhibited when alcohol's involved, and I just got this vibe. But when I basically confronted both men separately, trying to see if there was a mutual interest, they both shut me down pretty quickly. It ended up being a very weird night for me because I had fun and I had such a Vegas night. I mean, we stayed up till like 6 or 7 in the morning. I've never done that in my life. And then I had to catch a plane the next day, and it was rough. And by the next day, I mean the same day, just hours later. But I had the Vegas experience. I went out, I had fun. But the interaction with these two men left me feeling so uneasy, because I think it triggered something from childhood, from having a gay childhood, of like, the men you're interested in, or the boys you're interested in, it's like you'll never be what they really want. Or even if they do secretly want that, they can't admit it to themselves yet, or there's some kind of barrier. And I ended up having a weird day. Like, flying back, I thought about it the whole flight. I felt kind of bad because I thought that I became, you know, I've had women hit on me, and it makes me very uncomfortable if like they don't get the memo that I'm not interested. And so in my mind, I was like, did I just become that for them? You know, there's homophobia, but then there's also somebody feeling uncomfortable with an advance from somebody they're not interested in. And then I just got really self-conscious that I became that guy, you know, who like doesn't want to believe that the other person's not interested. But to me, I was just going off of context cues, and, you know, I'm not used to a straight man a whole night being like, you're really, really handsome, and saying that. Like, to me, that's a very flirtatious thing to do. I would imagine that if a straight man said that to a straight woman, all for him to in the end say, oh, but I'm not actually interested. I think most of us would think, oh, he's toying with this person, with this woman. So I look back on that night and I still don't really know what to make of it. And if, you know, I am just so used to the cues of a flirtatious man, of a flirtatious gay man, that when I see that in a straight man, I don't know how to turn off that gaydar, or that sensory, I don't know what to call it, that we can say sixth sense, that you just kind of feel it and you know that it's there. And so I don't know if I was hoping for that because it felt that way. It just like resurrected this thing inside of me of this feeling of like inadequacy that I feel like I always had growing up whenever I had a crush on a guy who was presumably straight. I'm the type of person, I assume for the longest that the person's not hitting on me until it becomes blatantly obvious. So with these two guys in this friend group, this was a situation where I just kind of took a chance boldly and went for it because I knew in the back of my mind, I was like, typically I don't pick up on this early on. So here, let me like just make it clear and transparent. And I ended up feeling rejected by these two men who claimed to not, even though they said they liked me as a person and they thought I was charming and blah, 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 that it wasn't a match because they're just not into guys, is what they said. And it was very confusing for me because I felt that I picked up all these signs. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to feel like somebody's hitting on you and then they tell you point blank, I wasn't. So it was a weird night and a weird ending to my time in Vegas. It's just interesting that I went on the apps and didn't actually talk to anybody. Some guys reached out to me, but I just wasn't interested in them. And so it's funny that the last night, the two guys that there was a connection with, I got shut down by both of them. And the fact that, that doesn't even happen to me very often. I made a few videos about guys on the DL or guys who were straight, who I felt that were hitting on me, but I've never had it happen like this, where it was a very strong connection and I was actually interested back strongly with two guys same night. And so I felt like, is this just a weird coincidence or is this a Vegas thing? Like, is this also a big thing with gay dating in Vegas that, people are always drinking and doing drugs, so they're less inhibited and their curiosity comes out more so in a place like this than the average city? One of the guys I was talking to, one of these two guys, kept saying, because he lives in Vegas, he was saying that he can have anything he wants in Vegas. Everything is accessible. Like anything he could possibly want, he can have in Vegas. And so I was thinking, maybe this is a big scene in Vegas, because what do you give somebody that already has everything, right? They have all the drugs in the world, all the booze, money, gambling, like all the like sins, all the vices that we have as human beings, all the sex, all the strippers, all the whatever, the clubs. What else do you give them? And I think for people who are curious enough or who are greedy enough and just want more and more and more, I suppose then they want to try new sexual things. So a part of me feels like I was delusional, that like maybe I was too drunk and I was yearning for something that wasn't really there. But then another part of me was like, you're a pretty smart person and you're very perceptive and you're observant. And if other people in the group are saying, yeah, I feel like there's something here, then maybe I wasn't wrong, but these were two guys who weren't comfortable enough maybe to pursue that. So I left Vegas feeling weird, like bittersweet. Like I had a fun Vegas experience, the typical Vegas experience of you party all night. I got back to my hotel at like 7 a.m., which I've never done that in my life, stayed up that long. I slept for 3 hours, then had to fly a few hours later. It was a rough flight to Mexico, and I had to transfer. It was a whole thing, but I kept obsessing about it on the flight. I didn't like how it made me feel, like to be questioning all these things and to be confused by somebody's motives. And I think that is also a reason why I have stopped hanging out with straight people so much when I go out at night, because I don't like feeling the way that I felt my whole childhood, which is like I'm the third wheel, I'm like the eunuch in the group, because I'm so disconnected from this bubble where they're all compatible with each other and I'm like on the outside looking in. And I think even if it had worked out with one of these guys and we had spent the rest of the night together or whatever, realistically, even if that was what they were curious for, these are guys who then when they wake up and when they're sober, they're gonna go back to their regular life. So what I concluded, my last thought was like, you know what, this is a great lesson, which is I don't want to feel this ever again. Like I don't want to feel this confusion, or it's bad enough having confusion with gay men. I don't want to feel confused by a man who I'm not even sure what he thinks about me and if he's attracted. That's not a good feeling, to feel like you might be being manipulated or toyed with. So I guess the solution is, when you think a straight guy might be into you, run and be as stoic as possible, because you're probably going to end up with your feelings hurt, which is what I learned. So Vegas for me was an interesting place. I'm very curious what your take is if you guys have been to Vegas and if you've had similar experiences.